Hey guys, welcome. It is the 8th of June, and we are going to start off by looking at the news. So here we are. So we have at 7 a.m. Euro pound events, so you need to be careful. They are low impact, so I wouldn't actually worry too much. There's loads of Euro, pound, and US dollar news, but it's all very low impact. But collectively, if they all went in the same direction, it could cause some movement in the market. So we do need to be careful of that. In terms of trading a funded account, I'm just going to head over to the app and check if there's any restricted events here. There's a crude oil event, but we don't trade crude oil. So let's head over to the daily on Euro US dollar. Okay, so what can we see? So we can see there's clearly supply here, but we could take that into consideration too. And we are very bearish. So right now, not too worried about taking any buys in the shorter run, but we'll have a look. So dropping down to the 4 hour, we can kind of move these areas. So we kind of got the general direction. So looking at the 4 hour, what can we see? Well, what I can see is that we are in a bit of a Wyckoff schematic. We're in a distribution phase. So for those of you who don't know what Wyckoff distribution is, it's a schematic that you're able to observe on any time frame, and it's basically a range. So let's try get this up. Okay, so we have the preliminary support, then the buyer's climax. So I'd say preliminary support, possibly buyer's climax. Then we have the automatic rally and secondary test. That's the automatic rally, secondary test. And then we have sign of weakness and upthrust. Might need to drop some time frames just to see a bit clearer. So let's just drop to the 2 hour. Okay. Preliminary support. Buyer's climax, automatic rally, secondary test, sign of weakness, upthrust, last point of support over here. Yeah, last point of support. We have a few last points of support. So another support. And then this is a bit of a sign of weakness, which is what we're trying to see here. So I kind of anticipate price to essentially break down and maybe correct this fair value gap. Here in full. So we want to see price come right down here. So in terms of this being a Wyckoff distribution, it's quite evident. And to add to that, we are reacting off of that daily. So we have got our higher time frame bias to go down. So let's mark this area of supply. Let's mark out this area of demand. Okay, so again, we believe price will fill that gap. So what are we going to do? We're going to drop down to the 15-minute time frame. We're going to see how price is going to get back up there, if it's going to get back up there, and if it is, where we're going to be looking at. So I potentially see 2 points where price could get back up to. So there's a lot of liquidity along these highs. So chances are price wants to take out that liquidity. There's also liquidity all around here. So chances are price will go ahead and do something like that to get that retest into that zone. If you're a bit more aggressive with the market, you could look to take sales from here because of the supply chain that's formed. So that could be a potential, but essentially you have to take into consideration the fact that this area has not been mitigated. So maybe we're coming up to test that. And there's even area here, which is reacted off of this area, which is reacted for this. So this would be my other sort of area to look at. So a few zones in there. So it will be difficult for price to come right back up, but I'm sure over the course of the next few hours, reacting off of this area of demand, we should be able to get that push up that we need. Now, back onto our 15-minute. What can we see in terms of potential entries? So right now, I'm seeing another fair value gap. These are also known as imbalances. So this is how I mark them up usually. So these act as magnets for the market. So potentially sells here are available because although there's supply zones being mitigated there, structures have been broken. So there's no reason price needs to get back up there. But chances are in the longer term, maybe sometime over the course of today or tomorrow, price will get back up here and retest this sort of area. Now, there's two really nice areas I'm looking at for entries in this zone. I'm looking at entry off of here. I'm looking at an entry off of here. This area over here would be more ideal because we do have the imbalance laying over there. So it does act as a market magnet. So price could be pushing up. But again, doesn't need to in the short run, but in the long run, it will need to. So let's kind of clear up a bit of analysis. So let's clear up things that aren't very indicative of where the market is heading at the moment. So that's kind of what I'm looking at. And now heading over to 1 minute. I'm seeing a potential entry. This area. What I'd want to see is push up, then some sort of movement here, maybe a retest there. Fact that I need to see a liquidity sweep. I need to see liquidity completely swept, then come back. I want to see a change of character. Then potentially a break of structure, then an entry right down, and then we can take it right down to this low. Because that would be the market manual would be targeting. So if we were to take a sell around this sort of area and it was to be successful, you'd be looking at a trade along the lines of at least this. So at least the 5 risk to reward. And as you can see, we're starting to push up towards that. So we'll have to see what market really wants to do at the moment, because looking at the 15-minute again, you can see that this value gap is on the 15-minute, so it's higher time frame in relation to the 1-minute. So you really need to be careful about potential significance of entering up a bit higher, because that's fairly valid. And you could be in a position where you've taken 2 trades in this zone, 2 trades in that zone, 2 trades in that zone, 2 in this and 2 in this. You need to wait for the confirmations to ensure that you're minimizing it to maybe 2 trades in total out of all the zones, so you know where price is heading. We can look on the 3-minute as well. Nothing really too obvious on the 3-minute, possibly 5-minute. Yeah, possibly the fact that this high is tagging off of this low, but I'm still seeing that fair value gap up in here. So this does look like a good area to enter, but right now I'm kind of looking at this area because it's closer. Volume is quite low in the market at the moment. In half an hour, it's going to start really pushing. So when that push happens, it usually changes direction. So maybe around 7 o'clock will be in this sort of area. Notice how there's another imbalance over there. So where could other potential entries be? Let's look at this 15-minute wick. Yeah, we could potentially see an entry upon this low. We still do need to be very careful. The price isn't very clear for a trade at the moment. Price isn't too clear, so that's why we need to see those confirmations. So yeah, that's it on Euro US dollar. Now heading over to GBP US dollar, what can we see? Now what we can see is quite clear that price is going to be heading up to this area over the next few weeks. Should we break this high, I don't see any reason for price to stop until it gets to this area. So what can we do to trade this? So what I'm seeing on the 4-hour, so on the daily, we're seeing that break of structure. On the 4-hour, we are seeing a bit of a liquidity sweep and a break of structure. Yes, we need to kind of break these areas. Once we broke this high, we could potentially see price keep heading up. No personally clear zones for me to be watching out for just yet, but I am seeing this sort of move where liquidity has been swept over here. So we could potentially be entering off of that area over here. So let's head over to the 1-minute, kind of see where we're looking at entry. So we've had this supply, which this supply reacted there. This supply reacted there. This supply reacted there. Supply reacted there. Supply reacted there. Supply reacted there. This supply unreacted. So we could, it's a really clear supply chain there. However, there is a lot of liquidity above these highs. So potentially price could just fuel even more and shoot through. So nothing really clear on GPUSD. Potential buys, however. So what I'm seeing is there was this formed, and if we head back to the 1 minute, what we can see is we've clearly played off of this inside bar, had a change of character, had a break of structure, and we could potentially be looking for buys, but there's nothing clear on the 1 minute, so we could potentially be looking out for potential buys over here. So maybe something off of this wick, because that wick has grabbed the low of that wick, so it's really a liquidity sweep. So you could be looking at potential area in there around 70 with stops around. I'd personally put stops at 2.5 pips because there's a bit of a imbalance here. So I target 15-minute over there. And back to 1 minute, that's a nice 4.4 risk to reward. So that could be a potential trade, but we need to see confirmations, which we have in a way, so that could be a risk entry. Yeah, Euro-US dollar is kind of approaching our zone, bit of a range, which is nice to see, because usually you have that range, then you have that liquidity grab, then that filtered downside, then that retest, which is where we'd enter off of, then we'd see it go down. So we'll see how that plays out. But again, potentially these highs could be taken out and we could just go up to this zone. Looking at the US dollar index, what can we see? So we can see that we're potentially playing off of supply. It's not too obvious, but we dropped down to 5 minutes. It's quite clear that we've had a structure, a bit more of a change of character, I'd say. And then you have this inside bar and dropping right down to 1 minute. It's not very clear because the chart isn't the cleanest, but some sort of reaction in here. And then we'd be going down, but maybe we're reacting off of this inside bar here, which is a very potential, very likely move, and that could mean that price will go down to the 15-minute area over here. So today is all about patience, really. So in the shorter term, price is going down, in the longer term, it's going up, as far as I can see it, unless we can break this high, which we probably won't, because this looks like there's a ton of liquidity down here, which price will want to grab. So we'll have to see. So that concludes our call for today, and I'll see you guys next time.